right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's pre-lock show where we're going to talk through this slate. There's a lot of news. There's a lot of value. And there's some low-owned guys, too, who I think should be a little bit more popular. So we're going to get to it. We're not going to waste too much time. But usually, in the past, I would take a little bit of time to celebrate some of the wins we've had. We had quite a few guys take down some tournaments last night. I know my guy Thomas did as well. So honestly, good all the way around. Wasn't my best night, I'll be honest, but Monday was really good for me. So I'm with you, Octavius. I need to bounce back from last night, but so far the season's been pretty kind to me, so I can't complain too much. Tattoo, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Thomas, good to see you as well, man. Let's get to it. The first game on the slate is interesting. We have the Raptors going up against the Hornets. This Raptors team is cursed. I'm not going to lie. Podol said it going into the season. They aren't going to win a championship. They know that, but the injuries are just racking up for these guys. So it just gets tougher and tougher. Let's walk through it. We have Scotty Barnes out because he has an eye injury. That came out of nowhere, but it is what it is. Kelly Olynyk's been out for a good bit. Quickly's been out. Bruce Brown's still not playing for this team. So we're getting a lot of exposure to this Raptors team tonight. And it's hard to be nervous about them because they're playing the Hornets. So it's a really good matchup for pretty much all of them. I'm not going to lie. I have a shit ton of Jakob Poeltl. He's in almost all of my lines. RJ Barrett, I'm significantly over the field on. You see the ownership here. For those of you who don't know, this is DFS Army's optimizer. If you're interested in being able to use the optimizer and follow along, feel free to use promo code BOB if you want a 10% discount. If not, continue to do what you're doing. Feel free to listen to some of this advice. For me, though, the Raptors are a team I like. We are still, I like Chris Boucher as well. He's someone that I'm forcing some exposure to. I'm going to be over the field on him. And Davion Mitchell showing up in 1% of my lines. Don't love that. But again, they're missing a lot of bodies. We'll see some unique rotations today. And that will kind of help us see how we want to move forward. Grady Dick, he's fine. I've seen some people talk about him today. He didn't really stand out for me on this slate. Because like I said, we have a good amount of value. So I feel like it was getting a little cute looking at Grady Dick. So I couldn't really get there personally, but let me look a little bit closer at him and make sure I'm not missing anything. He's going to see a lot of minutes, and we have him projected for 33 minutes. Just given his recent points per minute production, it's hard for me to get overly excited about it. Similar to Davion Mitchell, I feel the same about both of them, but it wouldn't shock me if he does well. That 1% ownership is what makes him a little bit more interesting for me, but again, there's just other value I like more. So you're not crazy if you get there, but, I didn't love it. Tattoo, I appreciate you. Thank you for being on your best behavior. Dixon, Josiah, do you think Melo covers his 41.5 points, rebounds, and assists, and Bridges 18.5 points? Dixon, I am not a props guy. That is just not me. I'm good at DFS. I've had a lot of success, but, when it comes to props, my brain just doesn't think that way. It wouldn't shock me if they do, but I have no clue, to be honest with you. Brunson is due, but I hate betting Miami games because of pace. You're right. We'll get there, but I'm not disagreeing with you by any means. Thomas, is Isaiah Jackson showing a lot for you? For me so far, let me double check. I saw people talking about him in the Discord. He's not showing up for me. I already refreshed. I have the most updated thing. He's not showing for me yet, but we'll get there too, and I'll see if I'm missing something. Harris revenge game. Oh, Harris. All right, we'll get there too. But all right, guys. For the Raptors, for me, it's Barrett, it's Poeltl, it's Boucher. I like his low ownership, and with Scotty Barnes out, I think he sees a few more minutes. He's always been a decent points per minute guy. He's way too low owned tonight, in my opinion, and so cheap. I really like him today, and that's pretty much it. For the Hornets, this is just the Hornets are never overly special. Let's see. Do we have any injury news for them? Going all the way up to Charlotte. Not really anything new. I mean, we know Mark Williams has been out. Brandon Miller, yeah, that does matter a bit more. But you're getting ownership to these guys. I feel like with the Hornets, these aren't guys we have to talk too much about. LaMelo Ball is one of the chalkiest players on the slate. Miles Bridges could be interesting at very low ownership. He's someone I might need to force a bit more exposure to. Let me see. Are there any of these other guys showing up? Trey Mann is very chalky. He's only showing up in about 8% of my lines, but that's just because I'm forcing exposure to other guards on the slate. So I don't think Trey Mann's a bad play by any means, but just because of some of the other guards that we'll talk through as we go further into these games, he's just not showing up as much for me. But I mean, RJ Barrett is at that small forward position, but he's probably the only him and the Boston guys that we'll talk about. He's really the only let me look power forward actually. Yeah, I don't actually love any of the power forwards outside of the Boston guy. I'll talk about when we get there. And I'm not really trying to chase the Paolo chalk tonight. So I'm going to make this a pre-lock show leverage play. Miles Bridges at very low ownership without Brandon Miller. I think that just makes a lot of sense to play him. He's a little pricey at 7,200, but I want to be over the field on him in a soft matchup. So the guys I'm forcing exposure to are LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and then actually we can just look at this live. If you don't have exposure, if you don't have access to the optimizer, then you can't do this. So it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I have a 10% min on Miles Bridges, 30% min on LaMelo Ball, and then I'm letting the DS do the rest of it. And then you see like Nick Richards is showing up for me around 60%. That's a little bit more Nick Richards than I would like to see. He's fine at his price tag of 4,800, but there's other centers I like on this slate. So I'm going to put a 50% cap on Nick Richards. Just ideally, he won't be a leverage play for me tonight. And then we'll do one last look and see what other Hornet players are showing up. Some of your questions, like one-ors or multiple questions around players, I'll get to when the show ends, as long as we have time. Dixon, see, we're on the same page again. Yeah, last night scoring was wild. Like, scoring was just a 350 was not cutting it as much as it typically would. But still, doubling your money, Tyrell, man, that's still awesome. So congrats. All right, let's see what Hornet players are showing up. We have LaMelo, like I said, over the field. I forced that. Nick Richards was still over the field, but just not getting as much. And Isaiah Jackson is showing up now with the news that happened, so we'll get to that. And then Miles Bridges, forced exposure to him. And then Trey Mann, you see, is now at around 3% ownership. So I don't like Trey Mann enough where I'm going to force him in, but whatever the DS wants, I'll just let it do its thing there. Next up, we have the Atlanta Hawks going up against the Wizards. Speaking of teams that cannot be healthy, the Atlanta Hawks are going through it too. DeAndre Hunter, did we get that news yet? Let me see. I feel like I saw that come through my feed. But yeah, DeAndre Hunter ruled out. And so with Hunter out, that does mean we have to look a little bit closer at the Hawks tonight. I was hoping he was going to play, and then we didn't have to worry about it too much. But for me, Trae Young is the obvious play here. He's pricey at 9,900, but I want exposure to him in this soft matchup. Both of these teams are two of the worst defenses in the NBA, and so I'm going to pick on both sides of it. Right now, I have a like on Trae Young, and that's doing enough for him to show up in 30% of my lines, so I'm around double the field on him, and I'm very comfortable with that. Let's see, do any other Hawks show up naturally, or do I need to force them in? I don't care about Clint Capella today because Okongwu's back. That also makes me less interested in Rhodey because he was playing the 5 a little bit last time out. Big body out there. Larry Nance is not a guy I'm looking to go back to, but I do want exposure to Jalen Johnson, so I'll put like a 15% min on him to make him show up a bit more for me. I don't really care if I'm around field weight. I just want to have exposure. And then Risa Shea hasn't looked the best, but he's seeing minutes. And especially with Hunter out, I feel pretty good about that. his price tag is nice, and so I wouldn't be mad about being over the field on him. But I'm gonna put a 10% min on him for now, just to kind of make sure I'm getting him in lines, because he's someone that I think should be there in a soft matchup and one of the higher game totals on the slate. Yeah, so we're looking at Johnson, Ricochet, and Trae Young as the guys I'm forcing in. Anyone else who shows up is just going to be up to DS. All right. For the Wizards going up against the Hawks, this is, let's see, how are they doing from an injury standpoint? Let's check on that first. Not great. Kyle Kuzma out. Sadiq Bey hasn't been playing. Brogdon hasn't been playing. But Kyle Kuzma, that guy we saw what he did last time out. He was taking a ton of shots and kept them in this game in one where they really shouldn't have been winning, in my opinion. And that means without Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole should be able to have every single shot he wants. We know he's not always the best, but he's been pretty good this season. And so he's someone I do want to have exposure to. I do have a like on him. He's chalky as all hell, but the matchup's great. We know we can pick on Trae with guards, and hopefully they'll abuse it a little bit more today than they did last time out. And then Alexander Sarr, he hasn't been great. Sarr just hasn't been awesome this year, but from a DFS standpoint, he's been okay. He hasn't been awful. Not a great scorer, but he's been getting a decent amount of rebounds. And if he is a little bit more aggressive, a few more shots to go around with Kuzma out. And I also like that he's power forward eligible too. It just makes me more interested in having exposure to him. And let's see. Jordan Poole, as you can see, I have a lot of. Kalabali, he's showing up in like 29% of my lines. He makes sense without Kuzma. Not someone I'm like overly excited about because he's kind of boom or bust in my opinion, but he'll be out there and see plenty of minutes in a good matchup. George, similar situation. Neither of these guys are guys that are like great basketball players, but they make sense with Kuzma being out. I'm around field weight on him. Sarr, we talked about. I like being over the field. And then Kispert is showing up in about 1% of my lines. I don't think Kispert's a bad play. I'm not going to force more exposure to him. But if he's showing up for you, he's not someone that, again, like this is not a game I'm trying to avoid. This Raptors Hornets game is not a game to avoid. These are two of my favorite games on the slate. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Anyone else here? We talked about George already. He's showing up. He's just a cheap guard who's going to play a lot of minutes. So that's pretty much it for these guys. Let me see. What are y'all saying? Yep, appreciate you. Hunter's out. Dixon, you're saying something good about Poole. This is crazy. This is crazy, man. It's taken a couple years, but you're now on board. You're now on board. Let's see. All right. Now for the Lakers going up against the Cavs. So for me, I don't love this matchup. The Cavs are just a team I don't like to pick on. They play good defense. Pretty much that simple for me. AD, you can always make a case for, but he's not low owned enough where I feel like I have to force exposure to him. LeBron's been great this season too, but again, just given the matchup, not trying to force it here. Rui, I do have exposure to, and I'm going to be over the field on him because I like his price tag and I like how involved he's been in the offense so far this season. So I'm trying to get on top of that before he gets too pricey. But again, I'm still not going crazy there. And then the DS doesn't really have these guys showing up at all, and I think that's not a bad call. Ash, I'm good, man. I'm good. A little tired, not gonna lie. A little tired. Just been a bit of a week, but surviving, thriving. Can't complain. Okay, I do play high dollar on occasion. I used to play it all the time. But now it just depends on how much time I have. I've won a lot of NBA tournaments. Yep. For the Cavs going up against the Lakers have been a better defense this season. JJ Redick looks like he's a decent coach. Who would have thought? But I do think there's still room for improvement here, and I love the low ownership and price tag on both Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. I know my guy B-Dubs isn't here today, but I'll take the shot for him. I love playing Donovan Mitchell and I love playing Darius Garland. Okay, said, why don't you quit your job and do DFS full time? I did. I did it for like 2 years, but believe it or not, I have crazy expenses and never mind. People are going to say it's like a rich person problem. But anyway, it did not cover the rest of my expenses. I need a little bit more than that. Dixon said, come on, Josiah. You can't tell me that wasn't a great pun. It was. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. I just didn't want to give you too much credit. You get too much attention. Don Juan said, Cavs don't play fast enough for me. Yeah, that is the concern. This game, like, is a pretty average. It's pretty average just in general from like a pace standpoint. So it's not really overly exciting. I just like the ownership. Yeah, you've won a lot too, Don Juan. I've had a couple 100K wins. For the high dollar, like OK mentioned, a couple 10K ones too. You know, it's just more fun when it's not your full-time job, to be honest. Next up, we have the Boston Celtics going up against the Pacers. This is a game I feel like should be higher owned. It has the highest total on the slate. We have value where we can force these guys in. Matchup against the Pacers we know is great. I know Tatum has kind of fallen off a little bit over the last few games, but I want to force exposure to him. So I have a 10% min on him. And then Jaylen Brown, I feel like it's just as likely to go off as Jason Tatum on any given night, and he's very low owned. I like the matchup as well. I can't say enough good things here, so I'm forcing exposure to him here too. And so for me, when we look at the Celtics, you see Tatum showing up in 10% of my lines, Brown showing up in 10% of my lines because that's what I'm forcing. No one else is showing up. It wouldn't shock me if we see like a White or Horford or even a Holiday do well. We've seen Pritchard be streaky too, but I'm not going to force it on an 8-gamer. Okay, for me it's Donovan Mitchell. Next up we have the Pacers going up against the Celtics, and then just to cover the Celtics, no real new injury news there. We know Porzingis has been out for a good minute, so nothing too crazy. All right, for Indiana, Miles Turner is out. That's the news we got today. That's why everyone's looking at Isaiah Jackson, because we've seen this movie on countless occasions. Isaiah Jackson goes off sometimes even when there's not an injury, but with Miles Turner out, we're all expecting Isaiah Jackson to have a big role here. Let me see. Are we expecting him to start? Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Personally, I don't really care if he starts or not. I'm going to play him either way, but you always feel better about it when your guy is starting. Okay, it looks like we don't know for sure yet. But either way, I am going to have plenty of exposure to Isaiah Jackson, and thankfully I don't have to force that because the DS loves him just as much as I do. Showing up in a lot of my lines. That ownership will be updated here soon. And then let's see. The matchup against the Celtics in general, I'm not excited about really anybody else here. Halliburton's price tag is interesting, but I still don't like to pick on the Celtics. That's pretty much it. Jackson at 3,800 is just... I might even force a little bit more of him in there, to be honest. I really like him there. All right, Pistons to Sixers. This is when things start to get a little gross, not gonna lie. The Detroit Pistons are just not a great team. And then the Sixers are just weird these days with Embiid banged up and not playing. So, and Paul George, we'll get there. But the Pistons are relatively healthy at this point. We've seen guys like Tim Hardaway play a lot of minutes, but look at his points per minute. It has not been a pretty picture. He's not been doing a lot while he's out there, but he's really cheap, and you can shoot threes against the Sixers. It's been that way for a while, and so I am going to be over the field on him. It's not a safe play, but it's a GPP play that I like. Cade Cunningham, don't love the matchup, so I'm not going to force exposure to him. This is one of the lower total games on the slate, so it's just one of those spots where I'm not trying to force exposure here unless something stands out, and Tim Hardaway was a sim-auto play that stood out to me. And then, yeah, Harris revenge game. If he was lower owned and no one was doing it, I would take a shot. But, well, he is showing up in 20% of my lines. I'll just trust the DS on that. I'm not going to edit it or tinker with it. I'm okay with 20%. Hopefully he does have a good game. going up his old team. He's just been struggling so far this season. Let me see if there's actually any trends there. Has Tobias had a good game yet? He's looked awful every time I've seen him. Yeah, he has yet to have a good, but he's cheaper. He's cheaper than he's been in a minute by like $100. Yeah, would really need like at least 30, 36 points out of him. Maybe 40. We haven't seen him score 40 DK points since like March. And with Cade, I'm just going to trust the DS. Everything in me kind of wants to just X him out, but I'm going to avoid that temptation. So yeah, it's really Tim Hardaway, and it looks like Tobias is the only other Piston that's showing up. Nobody else. For the Sixers, let's see here. We were just talking about them. See if there's any new news here. Nope, still just Paul George and Joel Embiid. So the regular crew, Caleb Martin has been playing a ton of minutes. He's 5,100. He's been an okay points per minute player. He just makes sense. He makes lineups work. He's not someone I'm forcing exposure to. I am over the field on him in my most recent run, so I'm okay with that. He's just a player that makes sense, but he's not someone you should be overly excited about. Kelly Oubre, he's showing up for me in some lines, but I'm still going to be under the field there. This is weird. I usually would like the Sixers a bit more on a slate like this, but I think just because I like the other games so much more, none of these guys stood out too much for me. So I didn't do anything. I'm really just trusting the DS with the Sixers tonight. Even Andre Drummond, I usually like a little bit more, even going up against the Pistons. Let me look a little bit closer at this. Matchup's pretty good. It's because of guys like Jakob Poeltl. Drummond hasn't shown like that. We haven't seen like a 40, 50 point upside game performance from him yet. But it doesn't mean that we can't. He's done it in tough spots before, and this isn't a tough spot. It's a really good matchup. I think it's just hard because he had good matchup against like the Pacers, the Raptors, and he's just been around like that 33, 35 point range. He did have a 40-point game against Orlando, but that was like preseason, so it didn't really matter. And he's 12% owned. If he was lower owned, I'd be more open to forcing it, but he didn't stand out for me enough in my initial research, so I'm not going to get cute now. Let's see. What are y'all saying? Yeah, Tobias revenge. I'm on board. The DS is on board, actually. That's probably the better way of me saying that. All right. So for the Knicks going up against the Heat, lowest total game on the slate. Y'all know my philosophy. This is not a game you want to force too much exposure to, but it's okay to have some one-offs because these guys are typically pretty low owned. For me, it's Jalen Brunson. We've seen him have 40, 50-point upside before in tough matchups against Miami. We saw it a couple times last year. Would not shock me at all if we see it now. He hasn't shown the same upside so far this season, but it's only a matter of time before he does get there. And I want to be early to it, especially when there's a lot of really good guard plays, and he's one of the few that's not getting too much ownership. So I like that. Bridges had a decent game last time out. I'm not trying to play him today against Miami, but he's a player that I'm hoping continues to stay relatively low owned, and his price tag will go down a little bit next game, ideally, and I can take a shot there. Cat's getting some decent exposure. I understand why people like him, but I think I've talked about it before. I'm aware of my own biases. I'm just not a Cat guy. I also don't like the matchup. I haven't really seen Cat do too well in tough matchups too many times. Usually you end up very disappointed. So yeah, like I said, don't want to take too many shots here, and the shot I'm taking is on Brunson. Don Juan, you feel like the Knicks in Miami won't get to 214.5? Two good defenses? Yeah, not wrong. I am not betting on the total because I feel like it's already relatively low, but I don't disagree. It wouldn't shock me if there's just a lot of good defense in this game. And I feel the same way about the Heat. No one stood out for me in my research today. All right, finally some good games again. We have the Orlando Magic going up against the Chicago Bulls. For Orlando, let's see. We do have Jonathan Isaac's a game time decision. Goga's a game time decision. Those things don't really move the needle for me too much. Uh, we, I, a lot of us were on Paolo last time out. We saw him go off for us. That was a really good night for me because he was a leverage play. Um, I'm not trying to chase it. The matchup against the Bulls, this Bulls team isn't the best. So they're not really a team I'm ever afraid to play guys against, but they're also not a team I'm trying to force exposure against either. So I think it's a relatively neutral matchup. And so it's just not a spot I'm trying to run back to at a now 9,100 Paolo Ben Caro. Let's see. Is he showing up? Is Paolo showing up anywhere? Nope. And I've seen some runs of mine where he's showing up in like 1 to 2%. I'm not going to X him out. I just don't X out guys anymore. But the one guy I am forcing exposure to is Jalen Suggs at 5,500. He was having a good game even before Franz got hurt last time out. And at 5,500, we know the upside he has. For some reason, early in the season too, he tends to be like he just tends to do better earlier in the season. That's a weird narrative I have going on in my head, but it does tend to be true more often than not. And so as long as he's still 5,500, ownership doesn't seem too elevated. I did force exposure to him just to kind of make sure he continued to show up. And he is in like 18% of my line, so I'm slightly over the field on him there. So I like that. Anybody else? Nope. Suggs, and we're moving on. For the Bulls, y'all know my philosophy. I don't pick on this Magic team. Nope. Let's see. Does the DS like anybody? Nope. Yeah, I'm not going to do it, y'all. This is a good team. Magic's defense is solid. You could argue shots on Levine. He's had upside. Maybe White, Giddey. But ultimately, for me, I can't go there. Yeah, Thomas, I know the sim likes Paolo. I saw it. But, the sim also, we're early in the season. And so when guys have explosive games like that, the sim is going to like them a bit more for a longer amount of time. And so for me, I try to not overreact to the data too much. I could be wrong. Paolo could go off here and have a great game. You'll see this. I do this a lot. Like if I hit on something early, I usually am not the best at continuing that trend. I like to get off of it before everyone else does. So I don't think Paolo's a bad play. The sim likes him. Matchup's not terrible. Like I said, it's pretty neutral. Game total isn't bad at 228. It's like the third highest. It's not a bad spot for Paolo. I just don't like him as much. Bob, appreciate you, Darius. Yes, Dixon, you're right. Y'all, we need to make sure people know there are people actually watching this. So yeah, if you all could hit the like button, that would be awesome. If you don't, that's okay too. David said, trust the sim like trust the DS. You're not wrong, man. The sim model has made me so much money. And like I said, I really just follow the 8x column, and Paolo didn't hit 8x. He was just at that 7.5 range, which is still really good. But for me, I really focus on the 8x column more than anything. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, that's it. Not playing the Bulls. The Nets are a pain. The Nets are a god-awful pain, but they are on the slate, so we have to consider them. When it comes to injury news, the only thing that really matters here is Claxton's out. Played yesterday, got hurt yesterday, not playing today. Clowney hurt a lot of people last night on that 4-gamer. I had some exposure, but it didn't really burn me too much. But Clowney at 3,700 without Claxton, I want to at least be around field weight exposure. So I put a 10% min on him with the like, just because I do like the matchup too, going up against the Grizzlies here. This is just a good game environment, pretty good, solid total. Chance of a blowout, but I don't play for blowouts. That also wouldn't really impact Clowney too much either way. So I have a 10% min on him. Ben Simmons is back. He was not in the last game because they're being careful with his minutes because he's a, Dennis Schroeder, I am going to have a 30% maximum on him. I know he can get hot, but it seems like at least last time he did have that great game without Ben Simmons. With Ben Simmons back, I expect Ben Simmons to take on some ball handling duties and just Dennis Schroeder not to have as many assists and opportunities as he had last time out. And so I'm just a little bit less excited about a chalky Schroeder on the slate. And we talked about Clowney. I do like him, but he does make me nervous. So that's why I'm not going too much over the field. Right now, I'm about 15%. That feels healthy. Cam Thomas can get hot. Right now, I am trusting the DS. I only have around 9%. It does make me nervous. I don't have more. Like I said, I like a lot of the players on this slate, and so I can't play everybody. We know he can chuck shots and get hot with the best of them, but at 7,400, it didn't feel like a must play for me, so I'm not putting exposure to him. But maybe with me capping Schroeder, it might help Cam Thomas elevate a little bit more. Cam Johnson finally looked good last game. Again, not really trying to go back to him with Ben Simmons playing. Ben Simmons just hurts everybody from like an actual real life team perspective and from a DFS standpoint. He just does a little bit of everything besides score aggressively, but he still kind of messes that up for some of these guys too. So it's just hard for me to get overly excited about these guys because Ben is playing. And Ben is also part of why I'm a little nervous about Clowney even, because he can play the 5 if they really want to play small, or they can, use more DFS in those spots too. So it's just weird. This is a team I just need to continue to watch to really have a better grip on. But I think the honest answer is I'm never really going to feel great about the Nets. They're just not a good team. Zaire came through yesterday. He was a leverage play for B-Dubs, and that crushed. So great job, B-Dubs. I'm not trying to chase. He is showing up in 7% of my lines, and that's fine. And like you see a little bit of DFS showing up, a little bit of Cam Johnson, 1% Ben Simmons. I was close to forcing exposure on Ben here, but again, there's just other plays I feel more strongly about on this slate. I don't think Ben's a bad play, though, by any means. He just does everything, like I said. Let's see. What are y'all saying? Isaiah Jackson starting. Okay. That makes it even easier. Let's see. Cam Johnson and Ja gonna go off. We'll see. We have to see if Ja's gonna play. Bane will depend on if Ja's playing. I don't think we've gotten that news yet, but I'll double check. See, B-Dubs. I was just talking about you, man. I didn't even know you were here, and I was hyping you up. Y'all don't know. B-Dubs, y'all have seen. I don't have to talk about it. I Need Money said, this is a better matchup for Clowney. He was set up to fail against Joker. I don't disagree. For me, it's just like I said, Ben Simmons just ruins everything. Hawkins, and we'll get there, okay? We'll get there. All right. So we talked about the Nets. Now for the Grizzlies. Let's see. What are we working with here? Let me do a quick look. See if we have any updates on this injury news. Nope, not seeing anything. Not seeing anything. Nope. Goga's ruled out. Again, that doesn't really change too much for me. So when it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies tonight, when it comes to injury news, it's gonna be another one where we just have to watch. I said it on the last show. When it comes to Ja Morant playing or not playing, it changes a lot for this team. Ja Morant is questionable right now. He's a game time decision. If he's out, Desmond Bane becomes a very viable play. Jaren Jackson Jr. becomes one of my favorite plays on the slate. Marcus Smart, I'll be willing to go back to and take a shot on just like last time. But if Ja plays, Ja himself is a very viable play at 9,300. Not really anyone else. The Nets aren't like a soft matchup that I get overly excited to attack typically, but you can look at Ja at very low exposure if he does end up playing tonight. Zach is also a game time decision. If he gets ruled out, that could help guys like Jay Huff and even maybe Brandon Clark see a few more minutes. But for me, it'll make me more interested in taking a few shots on Jay Huff, and it will solidify Jaren Jackson's role a little bit more as well because they'll need his height. So this is a wait and see situation right now. The domination station isn't giving me too much of these guys. So, I'm not going to go crazy here, but We got to watch those questionable tags, man. They never make life easy for us. All right, y'all. So that was pretty much everything. I'll do one more run, and then I'll start running through some of the questions that I've seen throughout the show, and we'll go from there. But like I said, this is an interesting slate. The Ja Morant Q tag kind of frustrates me a little bit, but so far I kind of like what I'm doing on the slate. I feel pretty solid about it. All right, we'll start from the top and see what we missed. Now Thomas, yes, Isaiah Jackson's showing up a lot for me. I think I answered this beforehand. I am looking at Boucher. Jake said, "What do you think about Finney Smith, Terrence Mann, Cam Johnson, and Nick Richards? Curious to hear your opinions." Dorian Finney-Smith didn't stand out for me too much. I know he could play more minutes at the 5 tonight. It wouldn't shock me. It's crazy just how his career has gone. It's just so weird to me. And it's kind of wild that he might be playing a decent amount of minutes at the 5 tonight, potentially, especially if Clowney gets in foul trouble or struggles. But assuming that's not going to happen, he didn't really stand out for me too much on this slate, but I understand it. Terrence Mann, I didn't get to. Cam Johnson, I do get. But again, with Ben Simmons coming back, hard for me to get to. Nick Richards makes me nervous. He was showing up a bit more for me. The matchup's nice, but I did put a 50% cap on him because I just didn't want him showing up in all of my lines. And now, as I've made some changes throughout the show, and with Isaiah Jackson, that news coming, I will put an 80% max on Isaiah Jackson, just in case things get weird. I don't want 99%, but I am very comfortable with my pool exposure and Trae Young exposure. Yeah, Nick Richards kind of fell off the face of the earth for me. He was a bit of a problem, but I think with the Isaiah Jackson news, he just became much less of a priority. And so when I look at my center position, it's really Isaiah Jackson, Jakob Poeltl, and then Nick Richards in that order. And I don't disagree with it. I'll rerun. The Swami, what's up, man? Said Sharp app Proptimizer says Melo will be at 39 to 40 today. For those of you that don't know, the Sharp app is the app for Proptimizers. Also, the Discord and the Swami is the guy and GOAT when it comes to props. That's all the Sharp app. I don't know if we have a link in the description, but literally just look up the Sharp app and you can get access to that. Fantastic product. Those guys crush, but still, I'm not a props guy. I'm also just not great at just following other people. It's just never been my thing. Let's see. David said, if you had to pick one, LaMelo or Trae for FanDuel, who would it be? Tough. Where's the... This is the one I had up earlier. I'll go to FanDuel. Let's look at this. I need to see their price difference. All the games on FanDuel tonight. I don't know how y'all do it. I'm not going to lie. Okay, so we have Trae Young at 9,800, 16% ownership. LaMelo Ball at 9,500, 29% ownership. And James Harden's on the slate in a great matchup. Whew, they are not making it easy. I would lean towards Trae just because of the ownership difference, but obviously I like them both. Agreed. I really, Schwabi, man, that's wild. That is why I didn't catch this live, but that is actually nuts and kind of probably has to happen, right? Like, they can't leave us hanging for that. All right. Who would you take for King of the Court bet tonight? I haven't been doing that, and I don't think I will get in. I'm not gonna lie. Just like the money bets where there's not a lot of upside, I just don't get excited about. Let's see. Yeah, TJ McConnell does scare me a bit if he's on him. Okay, I get it. Yeah, tough defense. Any Cody Martin exposure? Let's see. Yep. Oh, I was thinking Caleb Martin. Cody, I honestly didn't think about Cody too much. I rarely do. Both of the Martins, I just never get excited about. Matchups, solid. He's been playing 20 minutes, decent points per minute guy. I think we can just do better than Cody on the slate. It was like small forward. Yeah, like there's just a good group of guys here I like a bit more than him. Tobias revenge game. Everyone's talking about that. Let's see. I am still a little bit under the field at 12%, but again, I'm still fine with that. DJ said back to Waters pod tonight. Thankfully, DJ, I'm not playing on FanDuel, so I don't have to worry about that shitty game. But yeah. I mean, I think pod for sure. Waters feels like chasing, but he looked really good last night, and so he should have at least an opportunity. I don't know. Actually, I can look. What's the ownership on these guys like? Low? I mean, actually, it makes sense. There's much better game environments. And they're not really cheap. How much is Waters? I mean, Waters, wow, super low ownership at 3,800. That's a little weird. Yeah, I don't hate it. At that ownership, it doesn't feel like chasing as much. I would take some shots for sure, to be honest. Is Andrew Wiggins back? Let me see. Golden State. He's a game time decision. So that actually would impact a lot for me. What I would end up doing if Wiggins is out, then yeah, for sure I would go back to it and feel pretty good about it. But if he plays, I wouldn't go there on either. You're right, man. A scary pool is always terrifying. But it makes sense. There's no Kuzma. We know pool can be bad. We can only. Oh no, you are right. He does still suck. He is not good. Don't get it confused. I think he's just more confident in his shot, and so it's falling a little bit more consistently. But yeah, it does not feel good. So yeah, Darius, I do like Poole. I have a crap ton of him. Let me go back to DK. Yeah, I have a lot of Poole. A lot. Uncle Cheese, no Pritchard for me. I'm not really chasing that. I don't think he's. I'm not playing him. If you think the game, yeah, he plays minutes these days too. We have him projected for 21. He's just not super cheap. We know he has upside, but it's hard for me to bet on Pritchard seeing at least 30 points, 30 fantasy points on DK every night. I just don't see that happening. Matchup's not bad, and it's not the most unrealistic thing. The ownership's not bad either, but it's just not the kind of play I usually attack. Ooh, I need money. I think especially, honestly, even if Wiggins does play, I don't think he's an awful play on FanDuel. It's definitely getting cute, but that's the type of play I would take a shot on if I was playing over there. You think Wiggs is going to be back tonight? Yeah, then that does lower my excitement for Waters at least. I think Pod is probably still fine, but I wouldn't go to Waters again. That's from the heart. Tyrell, tell me how you really feel, man. Tell me how you really feel. Yeah, I mean, Tobias Harris is like I said, I'm not forcing him in. I'm just going to trust the DS on that. My strategy is always trying to find low-owned plays that I think have upside. And so just to kind of wrap out the show, we'll touch on those guys again. Noah Clowney, one of those low-owned guys who I think have upside. And so I'm going to be over the field on him. Looks like we updated ownership, and that's why it's a little bit lower. Probably because we, let's see, what's Isaiah Jackson at? That's going to be fun. Do we update him? 39%. There we go. All right, yeah. So, where we go? Where are leverages? Yep. So I'm looking at Noah Clowney, who I'm now going to be close to double the field on. I still like him at this price tag, and he's kind of a solid pivot off of Isaiah Jackson too, even though I have a crap ton of Isaiah Jackson. Chris Boucher, 10% min. We know the upside he has. I think he'll play more if Scotty Barnes out. We'll have to see what the rotation looks like. Coaches have hated Chris for so long. Hopefully that trend comes to an end. Reese Shea, I'm forcing some exposure to. Again, I'm not going to be over the field per se or anything like that, but I just wanted to make sure he was showing up in my lines. Garland, over the field. Bridges, over the field with Miller out. Jaylen Brown, over the field. Love the matchup. Donovan Mitchell, over the field. Used to be a really soft matchup. I'm not fully convinced it's not still. Jason Tatum, wanted to make sure I had exposure to him. He's one of those studs I just think should be higher owned on this slate and a great matchup. Tim Hardaway Jr., scary, potentially awful play, to be honest. But I at 4,400, I'm willing to take this shot on a player like him. Sar, cheap, good matchup, over the field on him. Rui, like the role he's been playing. Matchup's tough. I think 15% is probably getting a little too cute. I think 10% is fine, so I'm going to adjust that. Suggs, 15%. Jalen Johnson, 15% min. I just wanted him to show up a bit more if Hunter out. Ideally, he will start to show up a bit more in these new runs. Jalen Johnson, want to be over the field on him. Matchup's not great, but he's one of those guys, when he's below 9K, he can definitely still get there. And then Ball, 30%, just making sure he shows up in these runs. So I'm going to refresh the DS and then do a final run, and we'll go from there. For leverage plays, what's a good min exposure to set? So I will have the leverage play sheet done by 6:30, and then I put kind of like the ideal range for me. But if you're talking about your own leverage plays, for me, it's almost always trying to be at least double the field, if not more, on those guys. Matthews starting for Hawks. Let's see. I haven't seen an official starting lineup for them yet, but they are not a team like Matthews is not a guy I'm playing tonight. I can just tell you that, Harlock. But let's see, what do we have him projected for? 32 minutes, huh? I might have spoken too soon. Matthews is showing up in about 13% of my lines now. And that's because he's supposed to see a lot of minutes. He's not a good player. I would not have him as a core play. Low points per minute guy, low usage rate. Not a guy I like to see show up too much. But because Hunter's out, we're expecting him to see more run. Let me look at some projected starting lineups and see where the cards fall. Oh, wrong one. Not official, but yeah, people are expecting Matthews to start tonight beside Risa Shea and Johnson. So yeah, Matthews is going to show up. Obviously, I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy that he's showing up, but he's 3,300 and facing one of the worst defenses in the NBA. So good call out. Good call out. Strami said, any interest in Kalabali? I didn't force him, but he's showing up naturally around 26% for me. So I'm over the field, but another guy I don't really like to force. Mo, good to see you, man. Appreciate you for still tuning in. Wyatt said, one player at high ownership you would fade. Hell of a question, man. Way to put me on the spot and making me make a call. Let's see. Schroeder. He's the one that I have a 30% cap on. So I'm not fading him per se, but I'm not going to be over the field on him. And then, I mean, I could just go down the list and tell you every risky thing that could happen. Another one that I'm fading is, where is he? I just saw him. Trey Mann at 5K, 16% ownership feels a little high for me. But again, the matchup's great, so I understand why people are doing it. And especially with Miller out, it wouldn't shock me if Mann's, I know Mann's usage goes up a little bit in the starting lineup, but it also wouldn't shock me if they try to get him a little bit more involved in the offense. So I do understand that play. But yeah, for me, it's Schroeder. Okay, Harlock, I hear you. I wasn't trying to put it all on you. Any love for she gave me the OB? Okay, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Let me see. For Obi, he's probably, well, with us now having Isaiah Jackson starting, I think some people thought Obi Toppin might start. I think we've seen that before in the past. Obi Toppin should see more minutes, but with him not starting, I don't feel like I have to play him. He's not a bad play at 4K. I don't love the matchup either against the Celtics. and he's not showing up for me naturally. Oh, I always talk way too soon. He's in like 5% of my lines, so I'm still under the field, but I'll have some exposure. Trey Mann showing up in 1% of my lines. Tobias, Matthews, Clowney, Sar. Now I'm just looking at my exposure to make sure there's no one I hate. Okay, good. I like what I have. I'm probably going to keep this and roll with it and then go ahead and make the leverage cheat sheet and go from there. Shrami, why? Tell me, help me fade Poole. Tell me, I know you hate him. But yeah, that's how I feel. Like as soon as you fade Poole, that's when he's going to go off. How much is Poole? 7,500. That's it. Like if he was like an 8-9K player, it would be an easy fade for me. But 7,500 is really hard for me to get off it. Is 80% max enough for core and 20 max? Yeah. I wouldn't max my cores in 20 max lines, but yeah, I think having around 80% in your 20 max lines is totally fine. Okay, see, now your bias is coming out, man. If you're a Warriors fan, you have to hate Poole. You're not a true Warriors fan if you like Jordan Poole. You can't respect the man. Like, I get that. Like, that makes sense to me. All right, y'all. Well, I appreciate you. My guy B-Dubs should be back tomorrow. Hopefully we can make that show work. Slate's a little bit later. It locks later, so we'll start a little bit later accordingly. But I wish you all nothing but luck tonight. Hope we get to celebrate again in the Discord. Peace out. See y'all.